we didn't know how we were going to get out of this. And this is why I say it's a terrible decision, because your ability to control how you get out of it is just not really within your control. You have to go through so many hoops and hurdles, and it is expensive, very expensive. It's costly on so many levels. So just don't even do it. That's all I can keep saying. This is why I say just don't do it, because it's a decision that if you say all of a sudden you don't want to do it anymore, it's not going to be easy to just not do it anymore. It's a huge financial obligation. And let's say something were to happen to you after you sign that timeshare. Whoever is your next of kin, according to that contract, they are going to be responsible for taking up the contract. It gets passed along. It doesn't end. Like, it's going to get passed along, and somebody's going to be responsible for dealing with that. A very terrible thing to sign. We start asking ourselves, like, man, what can we do to get out of this thing? It's tough. You're going to need a lawyer, one, and it's going to be expensive, two. So not only is the timeshare just a terrible financial decision on the fact that you're paying this monthly cost, month over month over month. You're paying this maintenance fee year over year over year. And when you actually go stay somewhere, you have to spend more money. It's crazy. And you don't own any property. Like, you're not getting any equity into the company, into the value of the place. Like, you don't own anything. All you do is own a debt. That's it. It is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing for people to consume. And if you don't have money just to waste, like, I would not even give this consideration. When we figured out that this was no bueno, excuse me. When we figured out this was no bueno, we started looking into how do you get out of these things? And that's when you start to find out that it's kind of impossible. And so was listening to the radio, Universe talking to me, commercial on the radio. I never listened to the radio like that. Commercial came on the radio. Hey, you trying to get out of a timeshare deal? Call 1-800. I was like, I'm so desperate to get out of this thing. I'm calling 1-800. Man, we call this company to get us out of this deal. That's when we find out that to get out of the timeshare, it's going to cost several thousands of dollars just to even put it in motion. And it's not even like a guarantee that they're going to get a result. Essentially, what you end up facing is, if you want to get out of a timeshare and you call one of these entities that allege to specialize in doing that, what they do is they find people like myself at the time or others who own and are trying to get out, and they bring them in, and then they take their money. And then from there, they're the middleman to then go find them a lawyer for their case. So they'll bring them in, they'll hear your story, they'll qualify you, get your information, and based off your information and your scenario, what you owe, et cetera, they'll say, okay, it's gonna cost based off like this scale or chart or rubric or however they formulate what the cost of the service is. And then what from there is they say, okay, it's gonna cost this, and they can't guarantee a result, but they say it's gonna cost this. And then from there, they take your money, and then they have law firms that they tend to work with, in which these law firms specialize in this sort of negotiation, getting out of timeshare contracts and so forth. So when I say it costs thousands of dollars, like, it's definitely like a decent used car. Let's be clear. But again, too, when you're in a bad deal, you just got to get out. You don't weather the storm. When you're in a bad deal, you don't weather the storm. You have to get out. Even if that costs you, you're better off just paying the cost to not have to deal with it long term than thinking that it's not worth it to pay the cost and then just keep paying it little by little over a significant period of time. If you're in a bad deal, you got to find ways to get out. When we paid these people to get out of the timeshare and then they handed us off to the lawyer, this is where stuff was starting to get a little spooky, because the lawyer was like, man, we don't normally take cases like this. But like, well, they took that money. So I don't know what you mean by that.
No.
You're going to take this case because they took that bread and they said that you could deliver a result. So the lawyer was basically like, typically to get out of these timeshare things, there's a term. So when you sign to pay X amount of money over X amount of time. So it might be X amount of money over 5 years, 10 years, etc. I don't remember our exact term. I want to say, I do not remember the exact term. It couldn't have been, I want to say ignorantly, it might have been 10, because as I think about it, it was like, yeah, we realized how silly of a decision it was after the fact. After we actually purchased our first house and done some other things, we're like, man, we need to get rid of this thing immediately. This is not a good thing for the household. So we spent that money. The lawyer came to us and we were just at a standstill for months, because the lawyer's basically like, look, you owe so much and you have so long left. They're used to dealing with people who maybe their parents passed and they are on the contract, but they are only on the hook for maintenance fees, not the monthly fee. Or people who are toward the end. Again, if something happens to you, the contract doesn't end there. Somebody else gets the responsibility, which is terrible. And so we didn't know how we were gonna get out of this. And this is why I say it's a terrible decision, because your ability to control how you get out of it is just not really within your control. You have to go through so many hoops and hurdles, and it is expensive, very expensive. It's costly on so many levels. So just don't even do it. That's all I can keep saying. All of a sudden, something happened. And what took place was there happened to be like a class action lawsuit taking place against this company in which we purchased the timeshare regarding their fraudulent or misguided, misleading sales practices. There was a huge lawsuit, a class action suit. Because of this class action suit that happened to be taking place, they were more inclined to just settle and deal with that. And so we were able to get our hands into that class action. And because of that, that was the thing that changed our outcome. Before this class action, we did not see a light at the end of the tunnel.